Welcome, everybody. I'm Dan. That is Bryce. This is kind of a crossover show. You're watching this most likely on Bryce's YouTube channel, The Hawk's Eye. You might be watching it on mine, Seahawks Forever. Still having some really annoying technical difficulties 6 weeks after the fact, but we won't get into that tonight. Bryce, how's it going, man? You're on mute. Wait a minute. I got you muted. There you are.
There we go. I got it fixed. We're good. Okay.
It's like I've never done this before. What the hell, dude?
Good. It's all good. It's a Sunday night. I'm good, Dan. Just wrapping out kind of the combine and studying what there was. And as we all know, there's all the hype that's going to be around for the next 2 to 3 weeks here about guys that were fourth-round grades going in that are now first-round talents because they ran really fast. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. And I'll say this. I kind of, I watched a few other content creators, Rob Staten being one, and I kind of in alignment with Rob a little bit. Like, the combine to me now doesn't feel like the combine anymore. Like, I remember early on, like, it was such a big deal. Like, if you go back to like when Russell Wilson and that group came out in 2012 and 2013, it was like, who's going to run? Like, who's going to do this? Like, how are they going to perform? And now it's like, okay, we can chalk off like half these guys aren't going to do anything. And it's just them talking at a podium. And it's like, okay, but we don't get all the access to the pro days. We don't get to see all the pro days of all these players. We just kind of got to go off the notes. I don't know. For me, who's a draft nerd and loves this whole thing, the combine just doesn't have the same lust it used to, it seems.
Yeah, and I don't think they're ever going to get it back. But I've gone back and forth. I've wrestled with this issue this week because there has been a lot of attention paid to it, especially the last couple of days. Like Brett Coleman has tweeted out quite a bit about how empty the place is on Sunday by the time the old linemen come around. And then a whole bunch of people that cover the event have replied to that thread or have said elsewhere that, look, the event's too long because it's not just Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the workouts, but a lot of the stuff that's the most important, especially to the beat reporters and national reporters and even content creators, happens Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so it's 8 days basically. And, no one's got the budget for that. It's expensive to stay in Indianapolis, especially during the combine when they jack everything up. And so it's just not very practical. Plus you have so many players now opting out of the testing. So it's not as much fun, right? I don't think the combine's going anywhere because it's the stuff that happens behind the curtain that's the most important to teams. It's the interviews, the medical, and the measurements, and right. But so it's still an important event. I think they can tweak it. I think they can improve it. Greg Bell, I think today suggested condensing it into just a couple of days, right? Which makes a lot of sense for me. But I think this is kind of cool. And let me do this. Let me do this first. If there's one theme, and I'll get your thoughts on the draft class as a whole here in a minute, because that's a big part of the narrative, but it's certainly one of the fastest draft classes we've ever seen in the combine. You can see by the graphic here, literally quarterbacks is the only position group out of all of them that didn't have the fastest average time this year of all time. Now, it's not exactly a scientific study, because what's also contributing to this is that players that know they're not going to time well aren't running the 40 anymore. So this isn't entirely accurate. They're getting smarter about what they show to these teams on a national stage. But it's hard to deny. You look at all the sub 4.4 times that we saw over the last couple of days, it's still impressive. If there is a theme to this class, it would seem to be speed.
Yeah, this class definitely showed that they have some athleticism and speed, but to your point, the amount of guys that opt out because they know they're not going to run fast, and it does water down that, a little bit in that regard. Again, I look at this whole class, Dan, and I just find myself underwhelmed by it. Like, there's some talent for sure. In every draft class, there is talent, but overall as a group, I just don't look at this, and this class doesn't exactly just excite me. And I don't know if it's because we're coming off a Super Bowl victory and we only have 4 picks, but just watching the talent out there, I'm going like, guys that are going to be going in the 3rd or 4th round of this draft really should be 6th or 7th round picks. Like, they're not of that quality. And guys that are going to go in the top 20 probably shouldn't be going outside the top 40. Like, it's just, I look at this board and the way it's constructed currently, and I see maybe 10 guys that are really first round grade guys, if that, and that's pushing it.
Well, that's not that far off of the norm. I think typically in a good draft year, even in a great draft year, even if you go back to like 2023, which was considered a really good draft, as was 24, most teams only have 15 to 18 first round grades on their board. Like, there are almost never 32 players that receive a first round grade. And that might be confusing to some fans, but it's teams grade for their own roster. They grade for their own needs, but they also grade based on a much larger sample size, not just for that class that year. They don't just assign first round grades to the 32 players they think are worthy of going in the first round this year or any year, but they consider how would it stack up against last year's class, the year before you, the year before any year. Is this person objectively a first round grade? Last year, we heard that most teams only had 10 or 12 first round grades. I expect this year we might hear that some teams, like you said, maybe only 8 or 10. It's the blue chip certainty. This draft last certainty. I think that's the word I'm looking for. There just aren't a lot of guys in this draft. There might actually be 0 guys in this draft that you can point to, and there's probably a couple, that you can point to and just say, I know no matter which team that guy lands on, he's a Pro Bowl player. There just aren't that many of those in this class.
No, there really isn't. And I think you're going to struggle with this class to see longevity in it. And that's where I look at the 2013 class and a lot of similarities, where we saw guys in that class go. And that 2013 class, you look at how many retreads that were top 20 picks John Schneider took swings at later on, right? Like, after their first contract were done. And those guys were guys that we're talking about trying to get on NFL rosters, like, Barcarius Mingo and, Luke Jokel and all these other guys. It was like, holy, like, and it just showed how bad that class was. Like, you look at that 2013 draft class, our best player out of it was, in my opinion, a backup tight end that ended up being thrust into a starting role. And that's Luke Wilson. Like, that was one of our best picks in that class, coming off a the 2012 season. Like it screamed to the point of like, okay, yeah, you're really stretching to make guys more than what they are.
Yeah, and Luke wasn't even the starter at Rice. He was, he backed up the kid that San Francisco took a couple rounds earlier. I did want to show this though. This is kind of funny to your point earlier. Like this is what happens every single year, right?
Yep.
This is like general. This is a chart. This is a very scientific study that I put together. Blind study, everything. Prospects that the general fan base, the consensus believe are worthy of being drafted in the first round. In January, it's like 40, right? And it's all over the place because the big boards aren't dialed in. In February, it goes up because we have the Senior Bowl and the seasons are ending and people can start digging in and studying the draft, doing their mock drafts and everything. But after the combine, there's like 90 guys that everybody thinks are first round picks, right? And everyone's sure of it too. I'm sure you run into this. I posted a mock draft today, and within 5 minutes, it like clockwork, it always works. You get called a moron like 10 times, like that what you're putting out there could never possibly happen. And there's no way that I might know as much or even be worthy of having an opinion as someone else. So it's just kind of funny. And then by the time draft day rolls around, as you said, there's only like 10 guys, because then it goes the other way. It's right. It's like, what? Why are we taking him? It's kind of funny how that goes. How do you feel just about the class as a whole? Like as a Seahawk analyst, as you look towards the end of April, only 3 picks in the top 100, picking in the at the end of every round. Like, how would you assess this class?
I think this class lines up well for teams that don't have a lot of holes and don't need to fill a lot of needs. In the sense of you can, like that. Yeah, right. And I think John Schneider not being there for workouts, as much as he wants to say, "Oh, I can get as much of it off the TV as I can," I think that speaks to it a lot too. Is like, if you're a GM and you're not there, and this leads to what we've kind of had heard all of the start of last season, looking into this class was, don't be surprised if Seattle doesn't have a lot of picks because this class isn't very good. And that's not to say the class doesn't have good players, and it's just as a whole, it's not a good class. And so I think this draft lines up for a team that can sit and go, yeah, you know what? 85 to 90% of our roster is already locked in. We're just trying to fill out depth, and maybe, you know what, we're going to take a swing on a guy that we think could boom or bust. And we're not, at the kind of situation of where previous Seahawk teams are going, we have to try and find guys and fill a whole bunch of needs. And the class you look at and you go, this isn't the class to do that. But, that's where we got the Jermaine Effettis, the LJ Collier picks, and stuff like that. And then trying to, recreate the Legion of Boom with the Shaquille Griffin, Tedrick Thompson, and Lano Hill draft class and, McDowell. I look at this and I go, this is where it's going to be very interesting for me watching how John Schneider, he gets what very few GMs get in a lot of ways, Dan. He is going to get a chance to correct history in a way. He's got basically an opportunity to redo this again and do it differently and maybe more effectively than he did with the LOB.
Yeah, I think this draft kind of works into the Seahawks' favor. It's very complicated though, and I go back and forth on this. I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't think any of us does. Like I could see this being a repeat of the 2021 draft when there was nobody. 2020 there was no college football, teams didn't play, there was no evaluation period, no Senior Bowl, all that stuff, and so it was hard for teams to evaluate the players. And so John traded a bunch of his picks, right? He traded one for Gabe Jackson. He traded Carlos Dunlap, I think, was in that trade that year as well. Maybe I can't remember all the other guys, but they only had 3 picks that year, right? It was don't
say the name, Dan. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Trey Brown. It was Stone Forsythe, and it was
person who shall not be named.
Yeah, the receiver. Yeah, now I can't remember.
D.S. Scridge.
Yeah, D.S. Scridge. Because they could already see that they didn't think the class was strong enough, or not that it wasn't strong enough. They just didn't have enough data. They just didn't have enough information to be able to proceed the way that they would like to. we've seen over the last 4 drafts, like how good this organization is and this front office is at their process and at whittling down their draft board and knowing exactly who they want to target. And if they feel like this is a weaker class, I could see them trading picks for veterans. Obviously, everybody wants us to trade for Max Crosby. We'll see how that goes over the next couple of weeks. But there could be other little deals out there as well that might make some sense. It also feels like the kind of year where, okay, well, it's not as good a draft, so let's try to get as many picks as we can so we have a better chance to hit, right? And so we could see John Schneider kind of going back to 2016, 17, 18, 19 John Schneider and trading down multiple times and ending up with 7 or 8 picks. The problem in a weak draft is finding teams willing to come up and pay the freight to give you proper value for moving down. So I could see it going either way, but I think you make a great point. And this is why I think the Seahawks have an advantage over some teams going into this draft, because this isn't a bad group of players. First of all, I want everyone to stop saying that. I'm so tired of reading it. It's not a bad draft. It's an uncertain draft. It's young because all the COVID eligibility guys are gone. So we're seeing guys coming out at 21, 22 at the most, some 20-year-olds. The 24, 25, 26s aren't as common this year. They're very rare compared to the last couple of years. So you're getting players that aren't fully developed. They're not physically developed. Some of them have transferred a bunch, so they've been getting different coaching on technique and everything else, but there's a shit ton of upside. And so it's going to favor teams that, as you said, don't have glaring needs, don't need absolute starters out of this draft, but can develop players and coach them up, and you might hit on some guys a couple of years later.
Exactly. And that's where I think, like, when you look at the cornerback situation for Seattle, yes, they need to take a corner, probably with one of their top 2 picks, but then they could also, with one of the other later ones, take another project guy that has probably great athleticism and a bunch of upside and go, yeah, it's okay. We can develop him and bring him along. And in 2 years, we have a starting caliber corner that has unreal athleticism. Same with the receiver position. Seattle's got basically starting 3 receivers coming back. You know, I get the Shaheed thing, but Cooper Kupp's coming back, JSN's coming back, Torrey Horton will be back healthy. You have 3. Yeah. Well, you do have Ricky White, who you stashed, but you could also take a Zachary Branch, a Jacoby Lane, a Reggie Virgil, and be like, hey, we can bring these guys in and they can be receiver 4 or receiver 5, depending what goes on with Jake Bobo and Derek Young. And yeah, maybe they're not ready to step in and be a receiver 3 this season, but they could be a receiver 4 and 5 and play 25% of the snaps all season. And then all of a sudden, like a guy like Branch, who his film at Georgia, you're not sure what you're getting, but he's got a lot of upside. But now all of a sudden he develops because you get him for 2 years and he develops. He's young, he's athletic, he's got this. And all of a sudden you're looking and you're going, wow, look at that great pick that we got later on. Because to your point, and what I've been saying is, this allows teams that are more established and have a concrete young roster. And I should preface that. That's the biggest factor here too, Dan, with Seattle's roster. They're young. You don't have a lot of aging issues either. Like, this is a young nucleus, a young core that you're going to have around for 5 or 6 years. So when you are, again, in these situations in the draft, you're not pressed to fill a bunch of needs because guys are getting old and retiring. You got to cut a bunch of guys. Like, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and I think to compare it to last year, and the reason that that some people are kind of out on this draft class is last year we heard leading into it as well, lacking at the top, no certainty, not enough blue chippers, but it was fairly deep through about the top 100, and then you saw I think that draft exceeded its expectations because you saw tons of starters coming out of that draft, all up and down, all the way through the 5th and 6th round. Some teams completely transformed themselves because of their rookie classes. The New England Patriots went to the Super Bowl, and their rookie class was a big part of it. The Cleveland Browns built a new core. Like they might have had the best draft in the NFL. And then even though the Seahawks had some injuries throughout the year, and so it didn't end with as much volume as we thought it was going to at the beginning, they wouldn't be in the Super Bowl without Nick Emenwar and Gray Zabel. So huge contributions from those guys as well. I wonder. And this is my hunch. This is how I think John Schneider is going to handle this. I think we're going to be a lot more active in free agency than we normally are. And not necessarily, I do think there's going to be at least one significant signing, like a guy that fans go, whoa, and that you and I, if we're at the grocery store, have to like, run to the car and go home and do a show. But I think you're going to see a lot more like value, like third tier free agency. Maybe some of, John goes kind of to some of his past habits and we sign more 1-year contract guys this year because A, we have the cap space, and B, some of the big deals they're going to sign this year are going to eat up some 2027 cap space, right? So those 1-year deals might fit in well. I think he's going to we're going to see John Schneider at his best, where by the time we get to the draft, we're not going to have any gaping holes or desperate needs. And so however many picks we still have in the draft, you can just take a shot on upside.
This feels like a draft potentially where you could see Seattle with one of their second to late picks take a kicker. Right? That's one of and as crazy as it is, but to your point, Dan, and what you're just talking about, I know this may sound crazy to everybody out there, but that's a situation you could be afforded where maybe there's a rookie kicker that Seattle looks at and goes, hey, like Jason Myers is a guy that we're going to have to consider with all this other stuff going on. How much are we going to pay him? And I get kicker money is still peanuts to other things. But when you start looking at some of those things in those deals, it's like, okay, like maybe we do see a kicker that we really like and we take a swing at it with our second to last pick or even our last pick of the draft. Because like you said, free agency, all these other things, you've done a lot of this maneuvering prior. You only have 4 picks, and you're not going to be able to trade these picks to get 2027 picks because that draft class is one everybody wants their picks for. It's the reality of the situation.
So combine wrapped up today. Offensive linemen were out there. It was a surreal experience for me to watch the offensive linemen this year because, and we'll talk about some of them. Like there's a couple of them I love, and I'm not opposed to using our first pick in the draft on an offensive lineman if that's the way the board falls. I'm certainly open. There's a couple of guys that I really like that, as much as I have said over and over again, they've drafted more interior offensive linemen than any team in the league in the last 5 years. They have guys that they're developing, Haynes and Cable doing Richmond. I think their answer is in-house to upgrade over Anthony Bradford, but you can't be closed-minded entering into any draft. And if there's a guy that you love that falls to 32 or 40 or whatever, if they trade down, or even 64, that you think could step in and be an upgrade at right guard and give you the kind of play that you want, you're going to take it. But it was weird to watch them this year. And for the first time in maybe 10 years, I was kind of doing some stuff on the side, playing on my laptop a little bit, texting, tweeting. Like we didn't have to watch every single move these guys were making because we didn't have to think about drafting 3 of them.
Well, it was like on the show, I've had 2 shows recently, Dan, where I had Corbin Smith on for one. I had Curtis Allen on the other night, and we talked about the fact that, like, especially the Corbin one, like, Seattle doesn't have to go and stretch for an offensive lineman unless there is somebody there that you can. John Benton comes to you and Mike McDonald and John Schneider goes, bang on the table, I need that guy. You give me that guy. We have a top 3 offensive line in the NFL the day that we get him in the building. Okay, then there's a conversation to be had. But everything that I have heard is how much John Benton likes the 5 he has. It's a big reason why he stayed. He loves the youth. He loves the continuity. He really does love Anthony Bradford. But to the point of this, yes, Anthony Bradford is probably the weakest link on that offensive line. But I would say Anthony Bradford right now is an average guard in the NFL. And yes, people will go and point, as you know, as well as I do, hey, look at all these bad clips. Let's put them all together and make a 3-minute highlight reel. Cool. Guess what? I could do that with every player in the NFL, and you can make
do that with Bryce Coutts.
Yeah, exactly. But what you're getting is continuity, something Seattle hasn't had. They're going to return all 5 starters. You're going to return 3 of them for the next 3 years potentially in Lucas, Zabel, and Cross. Yeah. I think Sundell is going to get better as a center. He had his first full year as a center, and you and me both kind of throughout the year were kind of like, does Olu make it better? And then we saw Sundell in the back half really step up, and I saw massive improvements, especially in the run game from him.
Yeah.
This is where I look at it and go, if a guy like Dunker is sitting there, then yes, you're taking and probably going and running to the table and going, yeah, I'm taking Dunker. But there's other guards you could get maybe later on and bring in. And don't forget, they have some in-house competition potentially in Bryce Cable, in Mason Richmond that are going to be guys that, John Benton wanted last year.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be guys that are going to be a part of this competition going forward. So it's going to be very interesting. And you notice how I left Christian Haynes that discussion, because I got a feeling Christian Haynes isn't going to be on the roster.
I do too. I think he's going to be traded for a late pick. I think there's enough teams out there, especially on day 3, if they didn't get a guy that they like earlier in the draft, because it's a solid interior offensive line draft, ironically enough, that, especially if they're a zone-based team where, maybe they throw us a conditional 6th, anything. Like I agree with you. I think he's no longer in their plans, and we both agree that Bryce Coutts is the guy that physically looks like he's capable of taking that spot. And we saw some really good flashes from him last year. And that's another thing to keep in mind as we get into this. And what we're going to do, guys, is we each have drawn up a list of 12 players that really caught our eye at the combine that we really like and think would be fits for the Seahawks. But when the Seahawks if you could walk into their war room, which you're never going to be able to do, you would see their draft board, right? Where they have all of their prospects, and they usually whittle it down to, I've heard like 100, 120. Like it's one of the reasons that they've gotten so good at this the last 4 or 5 years is they shrunk their draft board down. They've just raised their standards. And they just have guys that they are willing to draft and guys that they aren't. And so they'll have them off to the side with their grades, right? And then they have their horizontal board of what rounds they have guys graded in. And then they have the league board where they follow along as the draft commences. Well, then they have their pro personnel board also in their own roster. And you hear John Schneider say, we grade for our own roster, right? So if they're thinking about taking a Kalen Rutledge in the second round, or a Chase Besantis in the second round, right? Or a Bo Stevens in the third round, they're comparing that player not to the other guards that are available at that spot, but they're comparing him to Bryce Coutts. And if he's not better than Bryce Coutts, well, there's a safety we like, and he's got the same grade, and we have a stronger need there. They're going to take the safety. They don't do these things in a vacuum.
No, they don't. And that's the key thing. And I think that's what sometimes gets missed when people and fans look at and go, why didn't you take that guy there? He was sitting right there in your lap. And you go, well, does he grade better, to your point, than the guy that we've already got in the building? And I think that's where it's going to be really interesting. And you stole 2 of the guys that I like in this O-line group outside of Dunker there, Dan, and what you were saying in Rutledge and in Besantis there. But it's one of those things where I think the best thing Seattle has done is 2 things. They gave the draft really back to John late in that Carroll era, really let him and his group get into it. And John went through that process of, how do we shrink this? How do we make this board more realistic to us and what we're going to be dealing with, rather than having this massive board where we get lost in it? Because you really can get lost, right? And get kind of chasing rabbit holes and being like, okay, we've lost sight of what the goal actually was coming into this draft. And I think that's the one thing Seattle's done so well. As much as having higher picks, which has been great, it's being them sticking to their board, and they're really sticking to the best player available situation for their roster.
Yep. Shall we share our lists? Talk about some dudes?
Sure.
All right. So let's go to yours first. This is Bryce's draft watch list. He's got it divided into 4 positions of need. Right off the bat, there's a guy I want to talk to you about, because I have, over the last 3 or 4 years, especially the last 2 years, getting the opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl. Like, I've been watching prospect tape and doing mock drafts and writing for draft websites as far back as 2012. But I never really had a ton of confidence in my scouting eye, right? I didn't really care if I was wrong or not, because I'm not being paid to draft these players. But as I started doing this, and this became my full-time profession, it started to mean a little bit more to me. What I started to find, especially last year when I went to the Senior Bowl for the first time, is I kind of get quite a few things right. I mean, everybody misses, and I'll admit when I'm wrong on somebody. But I'll see somebody at the Senior Bowl. This happened again this year too, because we're so behind on scouting because Seahawks had to go win the damn Super Bowl. That I'll see a player that I just haven't watched on tape or wasn't familiar with that I really like, that stands out to me. And then lo and behold, he turns out to be a high draft pick and becomes a really good player. Gray Zabel is a great example of that. Like day one last year in Mobile, I didn't know much about Gray Zabel. I'd heard his name. I knew he went to NDSU, and that was about the extent of it. He was the best offensive lineman on the field, and I could tell within 10 minutes. And so but this Danny Dennis Sutton is one of the most perplexing prospects I've ever studied because he went out and tested great. In fact, here, let's look him up here on the combine results. Let's go. Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State. We're talking great size, 6'6", 256, 33.5-inch arms, Sutton. Big hands. Ran a 4.63 40 with a 1.63 10-yard split, a vertical jump of almost 40 inches, a 10-11 broad jump, and a 6.9 3-cone.
He's got a little nifty
those are
step.
elite testing numbers. And yet, when I watch the tape, it's like I'm watching it on 70% speed. It's like he lumbers. He doesn't have a quick first step. He takes these slow. It looks like he's dogging it, but yet he's throwing tackles out of the way and getting strip sacks and making plays. He was really productive on the field. It's bizarre. What do you like about Dennis Sutton? Talk me off the ledge here, because I don't know what to make of him.
He is polarizing. I put him on the list because when you look at what Mike Macdonald wants in his edges now, he doesn't necessarily need quick twitch and speed. He needs power. That's what a lot of the edges. You look at Tank Lawrence, you look at Derek Hall, who have been, and even Chenna, have been the most, they're more power rusher than they are speed, quick twitch, multiple move rusher. Like Boye Mafe was more of a quick twitch guy, and Boye's kind of struggled in the Seattle system since Mike Macdonald's taken over.
Yeah.
What I'll say about Danny Dennis Sutton is he has that, but what you can, again, we were talking about, okay, this is one of those classes where you can take a guy and develop. If you take a Danny Dennis Sutton and develop him and add to his game, like he's still a young prospect. He's not super old, but like you said, he's just chucking tackles and looks like he's going only at 70%.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those guys where he needs to fully, I don't want to say fully commit, but I think one thing Penn State didn't do well enough was really hone in on what he was great at. They kind of moved him around a bit on that defensive line, and it didn't really let him get into a groove. I think if he comes in and you say, hey, look, this is what we want you to do, this is what we expect you to do, you might see a better player. But I just look at his upside and his physical abilities, and I go, those are things you can't teach. You can't teach the size. You can't teach the speed. What you can do is teach technique and get it better and get that motor going a little bit. And I think that's, for me, where I look at him and why I have him a little bit in my, for me, above Zion Young, is I think there is more athleticism there than Zion Young. I like what I saw from Zion Young. You know that because we were at Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
These three guys were all three guys I raved about at Senior Bowl and loved, along with Derek Moore, who's just not on my list. But with Sutton, it's more of he has better athleticism than Zion Young, and I think could be a better long-term pro than Zion Young.
Yeah, and Young we've talked about on this show before. We certainly talked about him in Mobile. Like, the power is enticing. He looks like a Seahawk, Mike Macdonald edge. There's some character issues. He was just charged with a DUI. He got back in December, and there was another charge that went along with it. So that has to be answered. We know how the Seahawks can take guys off their board for things like that. But the power is pretty undeniable. He didn't test in Indy, though, and that was kind of a bummer because I think he was healthy, right? We saw him at the Senior Bowl. Yep. And he wasn't even, he had a good week at the Senior Bowl, but he was one of those guys who went to every practice and even played in the game, and yet he ducks out of this. So I'll be looking forward to his pro day for sure. And then Gabe Backus is a guy that I just, the more I watch him, the more I fall in love with him. He's kind of dense, he's kind of compact, but and he's got that power too that Young has, but he's got some juice to him.
He does. And you know who he reminds me of a lot? He reminds me of Derek Hall in a lot of ways, coming out in what he's capable of doing coming off the edge. And again, I think another guy that can really, again, be developed and you can hone him, but he's got a lot of the same builds and features that Derek Hall had. I think, though, he might be a better run down player than Derek Hall is at the start of his career. Derek Hall, we've seen kind of grown into that role, especially this year. You saw him really, I think, take a step in that area, which was something this offseason. I know you and me and Brandon were talking about it training camp, where we said, hey, the difference between Boye Mafe and Derek Hall is Derek Hall might be the better pass rusher, but struggles in run sets. Boye Mafe is the better run defender, but needs to get home more. Throughout this year, I'd say Derek Hall took a step in the run game. However, with Jackus, I think he's a guy that you could plug in and he could play on rundowns for you and be effective in that role. You're talking about a guy, that's when I look at a lot of the things that you talk about, like some of his strengths, he's got a wrestling foundation. He's really good with his hand placement. That's one thing I really noticed at Senior Bowl stick out. Like he can once he gets his hand and in that chest plate area, he can control where he wants to go with leverage. Like he is so good. But to another point to you, Dan, is his motor. Like he just goes and he doesn't stop until he hears the whistle. And even then, sometimes, he gets in trouble. The thing I think that might even bump him up Seattle's board is his flexibility. He can play with his hand in the dirt, but he can also play as a stand-up edge and drop a little bit in the coverage, which, again, as we know with Mike McDonald, likes to have that versatility. So he's a guy for me that is slowly edging up. Like if I could redo this list, it would probably be Sutton, Jackus, and then Young.
And then running backs, every single day at the combine, Ian Rappaport came on and basically told us all that Ken Walker wasn't going to be a Seahawk anymore. Brady Anderson came on my show on Thursday, said he thinks it's less than 50% chance that Walker comes back, that his market is simply going to exceed what the Seahawks are willing to pay for a running back that has had some durability issues. And so we're looking hard at this class. And from the beginning of the process, most of the conversation I've seen, and certainly my opinion about the draft, and I know we all agree because we talked about it a lot in Mobile, is it's a solid and deep running back class. There's some people I've heard lately, though, that don't think so. But I disagree. I think there's starters all the way through. Potentially, you can get starters in the 4th and 5th round. But these are 3 guys, and I know we're going to have some carryover on a couple of these guys. What do you like the most about these 3 guys? And are in your opinion, are all 3 of them guys capable of coming in as a rookie and playing starter snaps?
Oh, 100%. All 3 guys, in my opinion, you could line up and say day one, you're the starting running back in the tandem, and we're going to give you the ball 15 times a game. The thing I like about all 3 of these guys is, to me, they're a little bit of Walker and a little bit of Charbonnet mixed. You get a little, like with Katron Allen, he's got some speed to him, but he's also got the power. And I think that's the one thing. If my guess is Ken Walker's not back, Zach Charbonnet's not back till October, let's say, depending on how his knee recovery goes.
I think it's going to be December, man. It's already March, and he just had surgery.
Yeah, so we're talking about a guy that's not going to be there till a mid to late season. Kenny McIntosh, I know there's a lot of people that are, I can't wait to see Kenny. Kenny's coming off now 2 ACL injuries and knee injuries in his career. Mm-hmm. He wasn't known as a speed guy early on. George Chalani, yes, he played the number 2 role in the playoffs. He played it okay. I wouldn't say he knocked it out of the park in any stretch. And then it's Jacardier Wright and Cam Akers and Velus Jones are on their futures deals. Like, you kind of got this weird collection in this room of guys. And so when I look at the Mike Washington Juniors, the Jonah Coleman, who's been a guy, I've been high on from the beginning, and Katron Allen, I look at guys that can do it all. Yes, they're not maybe exceptional in one trait, but they're good enough in all of them that they come in and are factors in a wide zone scheme. And the one thing I like about all of them in this wide zone offense is they can all put their foot in the ground and get north-south and run somebody over. They can all catch out of the backfield a little bit. They can get effective, and run 40 yards. And I've seen all 3 of them do it at different points in their career. And they're all backs that are big. They're not tiny. We're not talking about guys that are sub, 205 pounds. We're talking Jonah Coleman's 220 pounds. Mm-hmm. We're talking 223 for Mike Washington. For Katron Allen here, hold on, I've got it here somewhere. We're talking of another back that is just over 215 pounds. Yeah. Right? Like, we're not talking about small running backs. We're talking about guys that are big, powerful guys that can really affect the ground game. And this is where, for me, like, if I had to rank them, and I think, the talk about David Montgomery being a trade asset for Seattle as a guy they may look at trying to trade for, if you listen to read Jeremy Fowler's piece, I think I would take Jonah Coleman because he's younger and he gives you the exact same skill set as Montgomery. And you're going to get him on a,
That's a good
4-year
call.
deal.
Yeah.
And that's who I think he is. Like Jonah Coleman, like watching him at UW, I've watched him live. I've watched him for the last couple seasons. He has great contact balance. He's a guy that finishes runs. He can run between the tackles. He's got enough of a burst to get you, those 20+ yard runs. And he's got soft hands. He can catch out of the backfield. He's a guy I really like.
Yeah, and it didn't surprise me that he didn't run because he's probably a 4.6 guy, and it wouldn't have helped him. We'll see. If I'm Jonah Coleman, I'm not running at my pro day even. It's just not. It's just irrelevant. Like, it's not part of his game. He's got enough burst to get through a hole. He doesn't need to run a 4.3, right? Not everybody does. Mike Washington blew me away at the combine. Let's go back to the screen share here.
Chris Rose, where do you have
like,
the best
we knew the size was
the
there,
SEC,
right?
So when that kid just keeps elevating his game and playing his
and
best,
we see a lot of breakaway runs on this tape.
That gets my attention.
But
They had a great Senior Bowl
4.33,
week as well.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
4.33 with a 1.51 10-yard split, 39-inch vertical jump. You can
and
see
you
his broad
figure
jump
with
right there,
Washington blazing a
10.8.
trail on the 40 the way
A
he
92
did.
athleticism
10-8
score
on the broad,
for next gen
39
stats.
inches
That's
on the
number
vert
one
as
for
well. The
all
explosiveness,
running backs.
obviously all there.
Really, really, really impressive guy. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, for me, all three of these guys I could all see being Seahawk picks early. And that's the thing I think you might see from Seattle. You might see Seattle with their second highest pick take a running back, because I personally, like, I watched your show with Brady and everything that I was hearing, and even talking to people that I know that are reliable sources, it's becoming more and more clear that the likelihood is it's not that Seattle doesn't want Ken Walker back. It's Ken Walker's market is going to price him out of Seattle. And part of that's the Super Bowl tax. And part of it is other teams lacking running backs, right? Like, I got a feeling Ken Walker will be playing in the AFC. That is my thought process.
And just to illustrate why they need a running back, and I've been saying for quite a while now that even if they bring Walker back, they're still drafting a guy, right? And if they lose him, I think you're signing a significant veteran in free agency, a recognizable, solid veteran in free agency, and still drafting one. And this is why. And this is a cautionary tale as we get heavily into draft season now. For any of you that ever want to when you're talking about the draft, say, we don't need that because we're good there, right? Stop yourself if you ever hear yourself about to say that, because it's never true. And this is the best example of it. You can look at our edge group and how thin of ice that group is on right now to complete. Like, we're this far away from Derek Hall being the only viable edge on that roster, right? With age and attrition, and Maffei's going to walk, and Lawrence might retire. This is what the running back room looked like in August when we were at training camp and we were all talking about it. I did a whole show on how I thought it was the best running back room in the league. All 6 of these guys on rookie contracts, the most talented, the deepest, the cheapest, and youngest running back room in the entire league. You had Walker, Charbonnet, Ken McIntosh, George Helani, Damian Martinez, Jacardier Wright. And then what happens? McIntosh tears his ACL. Well, let me just show you what it looks like now. George Helani is your only rostered running back on the 53-man roster that's healthy. Cam Akers, Jacardier Wright, practice squad. Akers, 2 torn Achilles. Wright couldn't stay healthy even on the practice squad last year. And oh, by the way, I didn't even realize this last year. He's already 26 years old, and he's coming off his rookie year. And then you have Kenny McIntosh coming off his second ACL, and Zach Charbonnet with a fresh ACL won't be back till December. That's why you're never set. You're never good in a position group, and you always want to add talent, especially the running back room. I just wanted to show that because that is certainly why it's a need. Let's talk DBs, because this is one too that I think I think we can all agree that they're not going to bring back Reek and Job. In fact, I feel the same way about Reek that I do about Maffei. I think he's gone no matter what. I do think they're going to try really hard to bring Joe back, and I think he ends up re-signing. He's a different personality type, quiet dude, doesn't like to deal with press or talk to people really. He's really comfortable in Seattle, and he loves the organization. They gave him a shot. He became a good starter. I think they get something done with Job, but that's not enough. Like, you have Nehemiah Pritchett and Devon Witherspoon, and that's kind of it. So they're going to have to draft a guy 2 and potentially high. Cornerback is going to be in play at 32, right?
100%. And I think Chris Johnson's a guy, with how he performed even at the Combine, what we saw at Senior Bowl. I think he's a guy. D'Angelo Pons is another guy out of Indiana. I think that's going to be a guy that could be in play. I know he's a little bit on the smaller side at 5'9".
Tiny though, dude. I don't know. There's no place for him to play in the slot in Seattle.
Well, he's not solely a slot guy. I think he can play outside better than some people think, and I think he's a guy where, again, you can move him around and be a versatile chess piece if you need. Taco Davis is another guy to watch. Yeah, in a lot of ways, and I think he can play outside and do some things. Taco Davis is another guy. I thought both the Washington corners, him and Bryce Coutts, basically killed the combine from their perspectives in a lot of ways and did a lot of good for themselves. One guy that I didn't list on here that we saw at Senior Bowl, and it looked like he had a rough week there. I remember we were all kind of like, really? Like this guy's going to be a guy, is Dalen Everett out of Georgia.
Yeah,
I think he's a guy that when I watched him at Senior Bowl, I was like, man, like, this is a rough week for you. And then now I've gone back and watched a lot of film on him, watched him, play, and I'm like, yeah, I think he fits the system. He's 6'1". He's just short of 200 pounds. He'll come down and tackle. He'll do a lot of those things. He's a guy that I would have added to this list, but he's a guy that I think Seattle could be very intrigued by. Another guy that I would add to this list at the cornerback position that I think, we talked about him. Again, Chandler Rivers out of Duke was a guy I really liked at the Senior Bowl. But the other guy, where is he here? He was on my list. Oh, boy. Now I got to find him.
Yeah, Johnson. Johnson's one of those guys that I liked him going into the Senior Bowl. He didn't have a great week in Mobile. He didn't have a bad week. He just didn't do anything to really stand out. He was learning to play press. Like they just didn't ask him to do that at San Diego State. Played a lot of bail technique and a lot of off man and a lot of zone, but really, really good in run support. Loves to come up and hit. Good technique. I thought his mirroring was really nice down in Mobile. And then you hear the interviews and you listen to him talk and you hear the passion and how much he loves football and just what kind of a dude he is. And wait a minute, I guess some people were saying that we were getting the NFL audio coming through, which shouldn't have happened because I muted that tab, but I'll just close it altogether. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, it looks like only when I was pulling up the stats page. Okay. Where was I? Johnson. And then you hear that he turned down big NLI money to leave San Diego State to stay there. And he was like, he checks all the Seahawk boxes. Unfortunately, he might've been so good at the combine because the one question about him, other than, can he thrive in press man? Can we teach him how to play press? Was long speed. And he goes out and runs a 4.32 or whatever it was. Now I closed the page. Just blew everybody away with his long speed. That was unexpected.
Yeah, no, that was the thing I think that's going to make him a lot more money and make him move up that draft board that much more.
Doesn't think he makes it to 32 now.
I think he still makes it to 32. I'm not willing to say he's a top 20 pick. I still think
Baldinger just put him as his CB1 today. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
He put up his little handwritten whiteboard with his prospect rankings, and he had Johnson number 1, which I think called him out on that,
but this is where I think it goes back to your scientific graph there, Dan, where he's now sitting in that 87, and then as we get closer, he'll drop.
Right.
He'll drop down. And I think it's because, again, this is where people get enamored very quickly with what they do number-wise at the combine.
Yeah.
And then you'll go back and watch some of these guys that maybe they didn't test as well, but you'll go watch their film and be like, oh, yeah, that's why that guy's above Chris Johnson. Or though that's why that guy's like a good point of that would be a Dalen Everett would be a guy where I'd look at it and be like, yeah, there's a reason Dalen Everett could be above Chris Johnson. Another guy that I didn't mention that I think had a rough Senior Bowl, rough combine, didn't test well, but his tape's actually really good, is Julian Neal out of Arkansas.
I have an idea about him. He was a guy that I liked early in the process because of his size, his length, his press ability, everything about him, ball skills, production. And then he didn't do anything in Mobile. Didn't look very good at all down there. And then he tested bad. He had a bad day. Yeah. He lost himself some money. And I was watching it thinking, man, if ever a corner looked like a safety convert to me, like Kobe Bryant did, right? He's got the size for it. He loves to come up and hit. He's physical enough. He's got the long arms, and he's got some of the corner instincts. He just doesn't have the long speed. And then like 10 minutes later, Charles Davis goes, I wonder if he could be a safety. It was another one of those moments where I was like, I'm not so stupid after all. But yeah, I was really disappointed. He had a day to kind of forget. When we look at this chart again, sometimes guys go in and then they come back out too. Like when we were in Mobile, we all fell in love with Jennings Dunker and thought, well, he's not making it to 32. And then between then and yesterday, everybody forgot about him. And he wasn't being mocked in any first rounds. He's in like the 50s and 60s on everybody's big board. And now after today, it sounds like he's back in the first round again. So
yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to, bounce. Another guy that I like that, could fall to 32, maybe. Like, again, we're not going to see, I think, a bunch of corners go in the first round. I just don't see it because a lot of teams don't necessarily have corner as a massive need on their board. Colton Hood's another guy that I'm still intrigued by, as a guy that could maybe potentially fall and be around in that range again for Seattle.
Yep.
I liked him at Senior Bowl. I think he fits what Seattle wants. He's 6 foot, 193. He's aggressive. He'll come tackle. He's a guy that I'll be interested of.
The more I do mock drafts, I probably go corner about 60% of the time at 32, because I'm honestly not quite sure what they're looking for in an edge player. We haven't seen them draft one under Mike Macdonald, right?
Yep.
So we really don't know. Are they looking for a twitchier guy? Is a guy like R. Mason Thomas in the conversation, even though he's, a little bit smaller, not a great run defender yet, but he's maybe got the best get off in the class. Are they looking for a guy like that? Are they looking for a younger, like a guy like Malachi Lawrence, who has all the athletic ability and pass rush skill in the world, but needs to learn how to defend the run? Like, we don't know. Or do they want a big base edge, right? Do they want a Dennis Sutton or, a Max Llewellyn, or, there's a couple of guys in this draft, right? An LT Overton. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but corner, we kind of know what they like and what they look for. And there's 5 or 6 guys that are kind of in that range, right around 32, that are all pretty similar, right? Brandon Cisse, Colton Hood, Chris Johnson, Avion Terrell. Sometimes I see him falling to 32. They're all guys that are 6 foot, 6'1", long arms, love to hit, can play the run, and can play man. So it just seems like that's the pick at 32.
Yeah, I think what will determine that first round pick is if Seattle ends up, to be honest with you, it'll depend on 2 dominoes. What happens with DeMarcus Lawrence, and does Max Crosby become a Seattle Seahawk? And this is something I'll say about that, and we may get into it in a little bit here, but John, having been the Seahawks GM for 16 plus years, I don't think he's ever done what he's done this year, where it's like, no, I'm leaving the combine. I'm going to go back to Seattle.
Right.
I think there is something to what Albert Breer said, where he name dropped New England and Seattle as 2 teams that are very interested in Crosby. We know the history of John, where he finds a guy that he likes and he tries to acquire him at 2 different points and doesn't get it done. Mm-hmm. He will try a third. I think there is a very high possibility that maybe Max Crosby, and I know a lot of people sit here and go, we don't have the capital to get him. I don't think the Raiders are going to get the capital they want for him, because I just don't think it's there for them to get that. They can say they want 2 first-round picks, and the same thing Micah Parsons got. But I don't know if the Raiders are going to hold true to that, because I think for the Raiders, it's a different situation than it was for the Cowboys and the Packers. The Cowboys are in a better place, even at the point of making that trade, than the Raiders are currently on their roster. The Raiders need draft picks. They need capital. They need those things. I just look at it and I go, once we know what's going on with Tank, and once we know what's going on, and they could get Tank back and still have Max. That's not that those 2 moves do not exclude the other.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. 100% agree.
And I think that's where I look at.
Yeah, the fact that they're in a Super Bowl window, that they have a legitimate chance to win multiple Super Bowls, they're not taking a developmental edge at 32. They're just not. They might take a guy later but they're going to, I think, that position above all of them. And I think corner too. I think edge and corner, they're going to address significantly in free agency. Even if they bring Joe back, I see him going and signing like an Alontae Taylor or a Jalen Watson or somebody like that comes in a little bit lower than Reek, but maybe is more physical and is in that 26, 27-year-old range coming off their rookie deal. I think they sign a legit starter to rotate in with Job and Witherspoon there so that it's not a need come the draft. I think they're going to add a big-time edge and a big-time corner in free agency. And by big time, I don't mean top of the market necessarily, right? But someone significant, legitimate, that can step right in and start that we all feel good about. Let's talk about wide receiver.
Yeah, so this is one of the ones I think is a sneaky need for Seattle because Cooper Kupp may have one more year left. We don't know. But he's a guy, Torrey Horton has to stay healthy. And then you got JSN who's going to be on his big deal. And we don't know what's going to happen with Shaheed. We don't know if we're going to get him back. I think they may want to, and I think they're working to do that. But there's one thing that stands out with me about Shaheed the more I've dug into the season of acquiring him and everything. Shaheed made more of an impact as a returner than he really did, I think, on offense or to what we thought he did on offense. Like he didn't contribute much offensively. There were a couple things here and there, but overall, he didn't have the impact I think we all thought he would, even as the season progressed. Cooper Kupp got more involved in the offense before Shaheed really did. And I know people go, oh, well, his burner speed was taking the top. Yeah, it did a little bit, but we never hit on it consistently enough, I think, to scare teams. I think if Torrey Horton's back healthy, Torrey Horton is a better receiver than Shaheed. And I think we saw that as he progressed throughout the season. That Washington game, he was starting to come into his own. And I had conversations, I know, with you and with Brandon stuff where I was going like, if Horton keeps on this pace, does he not supplant Kupp as the number 2? And Kupp only comes down in on certain package situations because that's where Horton was going. And so when I look at the receivers, I look at can we get a guy in here that's going to give us, again, something a little bit different. And Zachariah Branch to me is a guy, he's 5'9". I get it. He's not huge. He's not going to, blow you away with the size. But he kind of gives Seattle something I don't think they really have, which is a slot guy that can take the top off. Like we're talking about a guy that's going to run sub 4.4 speed and he can just go. Like it's not like a long buildup. Like he's quick, he's twitchy, he can do the jet sweeps, he can do some of those things. And I think with Brian Fleury, that's something we may see more of in this offense this year is more of the jet sweeps, more of those motion things than we did last year.
He was there when they had Debo and we're doing all those things with Debo.
Right. Exactly. And that's where I think when he made the comment of there's stuff that, Clint didn't do that we're going to do that he maybe wasn't comfortable enough to call. Like, I think that's part of what this offense will evolve to is how we get the ball on some of those kind of things. So Branch is a guy for me. I like Jacoby Lane out of USC. I know everyone talks about Lemon and his, playmaking ability. I like what I saw out of Lane. I think he's a guy that can play, X for you and be a bigger type receiver. We're talking about a guy that's 6'4", 200. We watched him at Senior Bowl. He started to get better as that week went on from day one to the end of it, where he was starting to make some serious plays and he can block really well. And then the other one is Virgil out of Texas Tech, another bigger guy, 6'3", 187. He's a guy that, he's tall. He's a fast receiver. He's going to be a guy that you can use to get over the top and get some. He's kind of like a Torrey Horton in a way, but I think he's a little bit bigger body-wise. So I think that gives him. But those are three guys that I'm just kind of interested in because, again, I think the Seahawks will address receiver in the draft, but they won't address it with a high pick.
Yeah, receiver is one of those positions you take every year, for special teams purposes and guys get hurt or whatever. And like you said, even if they bring Shaheed back, I think it makes sense to add another guy this year because I do think 2026 the last year we're going to see Cooper Kupp in a Seahawks uniform. It wouldn't even surprise me if at some point during the season he kind of announces it's probably not his style. He likes to keep things kind of close to the vest. And then Horton, I just as much as I love him, I cannot trust him physically, like to get through 17 games. And so it's funny, you were looking at bigger guys, except for Branch. But as I was looking at this wide receiver group, I was kind of looking at Shaheed type players, and there's a bunch of them in this group. I got a couple of them on my list, but like Brennan Thompson, Deion Burks, Branch, who's
Kevin
another
Coleman.
Kevin Coleman, Caden Wetchen, smaller guys that are really, really quick. And some of those guys have return ability. And then there's another guy that's going to be on my list too. So let's go to that. I didn't go by position, but I kind of did. I started with corners too. So I got Chris Johnson as well. Talked about him, Cisse, Hood. They're all very similar in their profiles, although Cisse and Hood have played a lot more man, or at least press man, but they all can come up and defend the run. Like no one's ever going to accuse them of being Reek Woolen when it comes to that. So don't need to talk about those guys again. Bud Clark, safety out of TCU that we saw down in Mobile, and he just makes plays. He makes a ton of plays, and then he gets to the combine, and he goes 4.41 with a 1.56 split, a 38-inch vertical, 6'1", 188. Just a really solid, just playmaker guy who's always around the ball. A lot of fans might not think inside linebackers a need, but A, we haven't even mentioned this term yet. Best player available, right? John's always going to do that. B, you just never know what's going to happen. C, I'll tell you someone else on our roster who might be a sneaky trade candidate is Tyrese Knight. I don't know with this inside linebacker class, maybe there won't be any demand for him. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that we have a good inside linebacker class in a draft, but this one really is. There's some guys that are going to go in the top 10, and it's going to drive some traditionalists crazy because positional value and all of that. But Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas is a guy that's projected to go in the early to mid second round. He's an athletic freak. He's tall, he's long. And what I like about him is, I'll pull up his numbers here in a minute, but he's a former safety, right? I always love those safeties that become off-ball linebackers. Like they just have those instincts. He's 6'2", 238 with 32.5-inch arms, and he ran a 4.51 with a 1.58 split, a 37-inch vertical, and a 10.5 broad jump. And he did 21 reps at 225 on the bench press too. Like he's a guy that just seems like a Mike McDonald player because you would almost have two Nick Emmanwaries on the field at the same time. Like he could play weak side linebacker. He could play on the edge and get after the quarterback, and he can cover with his safety background. So really like him. And then this is like my Seabiscuit on my list. Owen Heineke. I was not familiar with your game before the combine. And when I watched him work out, I thought he's kind of small, but and his numbers he didn't blow the combine away. 4.62, 34.5-inch vert. But first of all, the size was deceiving. He's 6'1.5", 227, same weight as Drake Thomas, and he's 2 inches taller.
Dan, I was going to say, this linebacker group that you're bringing up and why this is such an interesting topic is Drake Thomas. He is a guy that, what do you do contractually with him, right? Like you got to think, like realistically, Tyrese Knight, Ernest Jones are under contract. Drake is a restricted, I think, or exclusive rights free agent.
Yeah.
So again, this makes it interesting. What do you do with Drake Thomas? And then you've got Chris Paul, who we did pick up last year that I believe they brought back on a futures contract. So both these linebackers you're talking about, I think fit what Mike McDonald wants and could start at some point in their Seahawks career.
Yeah, and the thing that really stood out to me about Heineke is he was the best guy out there other than maybe Jacob Rodriguez and Kyle Lewis, I thought, in the drills. Like his footwork, his back pedal, his drops, he was like teaching tape. He was so good. And then you watch the tape and you read the profiles. He's just a junkyard dog, similar to Drake Thomas, right? Just high motor, sideline to sideline, in on every play, really fun player that you can get on day 3. And then I mentioned Malachi Lawrence earlier. Like this guy is just an absolute freak. And I think he checks a lot of Seahawk boxes. Now, some people have already said like, well, what about against the run? Well, let's let Mike McDonald coach him up, and let's let Adam Dirty and those guys coach him up, because what he gives you is we're talking about a guy who's just 22 years old, 6'4", 253, 4.5, 240 with a 1.59 split, a 40-inch vert, 10-10 broad jump. And his highlight reel, like I'm not just talking about the all 22, right? because if you watch the All-22, you can fall asleep sometimes. Teams are doubling him. They're running away from him all the time. He played at Central Florida. He played his whole career there. He passed up NLI money, stayed at Central Florida to be there when he could have gone to the SEC and made a big bag. And some of his highlight reel stuff looks like Adam Sandler in The Waterboy, where he's just tossing tackles out of the way, strip sacking quarterbacks from behind, really high level stuff, and someone that I bet they would just love to get their hands on.
So it's really interesting.
Go ahead.
Eve Victor, one of the moderators from my chat on the Hawk side, put a comment in here and goes, I will tell you all in the chat, Bryce and Dan, something. Malachi Lawrence Malachi is my cousin. Yes, he really is. He's going to be good wherever he goes, and his character is great.
Nice. And then I've got kind of the anti-Malachi Lawrence at edge in Mason Rieger, a guy that you might be able to get with that 6th round pick, right? He's like, look, he's like the typical day 3 edge player. Like, let's not beat around the bush. Like, he's a big, tall, white guy from Wisconsin, right? But I thought he moved really well. He's 6'5", 251 with 33-inch arms, 4.78 in the 40, 40-inch vertical. And then you turn the tape on, and he kind of reminds me of Jack Sawyer. Like, just relentless motor, really good technique, setting the edge in the run game. He's got a variety of pass rush moves. He's really quick off the ball, surprisingly quick. He's got a really cool combination of power and speed, and he just never quits. He is hustle all the way through. He's a guy that I would love to have on day 3. A couple of running backs. We talked about Mike Washington already. Seth McGowan's a guy that I was really impressed with in Mobile because he ran so damn hard. And I think actually he and Mike Washington were at like New Mexico State together, I think. And then they both transferred. McGowan went to Kentucky and Washington went to Arkansas. Imagine that team. But McGowan is a guy that I think you can get in the 5th or 6th round, but he could become a starter. Let me just pull his numbers up here real quick because he tested better than I thought he would based on what I saw in Mobile. I just thought he was a guy that ran really hard. Like, he kind of reminded me of, remember Evan Null a couple of years ago out of Northwestern, went to the Senior Bowl and just like broke helmets. He wasn't that extreme, but where are you, Seth McGowan? There you are. He's 6', 223, really good size. It's kind of how the Seahawks have liked him. They've typically liked their running backs in that 5'10" to 215 range, kind of in there. But ran a 4.49 with a 1.6 split and a 42.5-inch vertical. Like, his explosive numbers are really good. 4.5 second, 20-yard shuttle as well. Really liked him. And then for receivers, I was solely focused on guys that, not solely, but I was really looking for guys that, like, I've already emotionally prepared myself for the fact that Shaheed's leaving. I was so locked in on the fact that he was coming back no matter what. But maybe it's not so certain. And if he does get away, like, I'm excited about an offseason with him. You talked about how he wasn't as good as a receiver, but I would love for Sam and that offensive staff to get him for an entire OTAs and an offseason to build that chemistry. But if they do lose him, like, finding another complement to JSN, we always want to find the big receivers. But in this offense, like, going back all the way to the 49ers, they didn't have big receivers. The Rams, when they won the Super Bowl, didn't have big receiver. We've talked about this a lot on the show. The 49ers don't have a big receiver. Like, it's those 5'10", 5'11", 6-foot guys. It's Cooper Kupp. It's Robert Woods. It's Puka Nacua, right? And so I was looking for some of those guys with juice. And to me, and I take this guy at 32 in mocks a lot. That seems to be kind of the range where he belongs. But to me, KC Concepcion, his comp is Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm a little slow getting these numbers up again. My this window just wants to drag a little bit because, tech just hates me these days. But KC Concepcion transferred to Texas A&M. He was first time he ever touched the ball as a punt returner for the Aggies, took it back for a touchdown. 6 foot, 196. He looks smaller on the field, but he's a legit 6 foot. And just, he had the bet. They don't have his numbers up here. He had the best gauntlet of anyone the wide receiver group. Ran straight down the line, really soft hands, great body control, can return kicks. It looks like he needs development as a route runner. Most of these small receivers coming out of college do, because they mostly just ran a bunch of slants and bubble screens. But really, really like him. He's projected to be a first-round pick. And if they don't bring Shaheed back, I think he makes a lot of sense. And then Jeremy Bernard, who opted out at the last minute of the Senior Bowl, we were all kind of bummed. I know Brandon Kane was really bummed that he did that. But he looked every bit the part. We know that Seahawks love their Alabama guys, their SEC guys. He's more of that kind of, well, I'll put it this way: 6'1", 206, 4.48 40. Decent testing numbers, but he just looked really smooth, looked really natural as a route runner and his movement skills. And then Daniel Jeremiah put his comp up on the screen. Do you remember what his comp was? Did you see what his comp was from DJ?
No, I didn't see what his comp was.
Some guy named Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Oh, geez.
Could play inside, can play outside. And you're probably getting him in the third round with they're even showing it on the, JSN 6 foot and 5/8. Jeremy Bernard 6'1" and a quarter, 206. JSN was 196. JSN ran a 4.52. Bernard ran a 4.49. They both broad jumped 10.5. I thought that was kind of interesting.
One receiver I forgot to mention that was a guy I loved at Senior Bowl that fits exactly what you're talking about. That smaller, shiftier guy that can just get open. And I don't know how he did it, Dan, but he was always open at Senior Bowl. Like, it didn't matter the corner he went against. And I know I pointed him out a few times too, but he doesn't go to a big school that everyone's going to talk a whole lot about for knowing receivers. And that's Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati. And he's that 5'11", 180, 190 guy, but he just gets open. Watching him run some of the routes, and he went against a Colton Hood, and he went against some of the bigger corners that were Chris Johnson, and he would just get open. And he's one of those guys that, again, if we lose Shaheed, he's a guy that I could see them potentially looking at.
Was he a snub for the Senior Bowl? He's not listed.
He was on the Senior Bowl roster.
I mean, not the Senior Bowl, the Combine.
The Combine?
Interesting.
Maybe.
A couple other guys that really caught my eye. Skylar Bell from Connecticut, I thought was really good. Another guy that he's built the same way as JSN, 6 foot, 192, ran a 4.4, was really, really smooth. All the explosive testing was good and incredibly productive at Connecticut. Like, just a ton of games, ton of experience, ton of productivity. There's a bunch of guys I like. I wasn't blown away by the defensive tackle group, mostly because none of them worked out. Most of them didn't work out. And the guys I did like were smaller guys. I thought Zane Durant had a good combine, but he's a smaller 3-tech.
His arms, they're short.
Yeah. The kid from Oklahoma too, Halston, who we saw at Senior Bowl, he's got some juice. He's fun, but he's an undersized 3-tech too. I don't know if that's a fit.
Do you know who surprised me and who I kind of went and was like, I think he got overhyped at Senior Bowl a little bit too much? Hunter from Texas Tech. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, Lee Hunter.
Lee Hunter.
I saw some big website today mock to the Seahawks at 32. I thought that was ridiculous. Yeah, that he got a lot of hype.
Yeah, he got a lot of hype.
Now it sounds like
I wasn't impressed.
Now it sounds like he's a second or third round pick.
Yeah.
I didn't think Malachi Fields had as good a combine as I was hoping to see, but I still
how he did it at Senior Bowl, I was expecting more.
Yeah. But yeah, a bunch of the tackles I wanted to see, Dominique Orange didn't show up. Christian Miller didn't test. Caleb Banks didn't do a lot of his stuff. Peter Woods, he's going to go in the top 15. Well, maybe he won't now. Peter Woods showed up like 15 pounds lighter than people are used to him being, and was one of the disappointments of the Senior Bowl. Darrell Jackson did some of the drills and looked like he weighed, like he's such an athletic freak.
Yeah.
I don't need to see him run any drills. Like 355 pounds or 335 pounds and moves like a tight end.
He does. He moves really well. And I'll say this. How nice is it knowing that we don't have to stress about tight end this year as a position we need to draft?
It's not a good
It is a bad looking class. And if they hadn't taken Elijah Royal last year, we'd be sitting here going, okay, Eric Saubert, Nick Caller up, and AJ Barner, like, we need to add somebody. That now it's like, No, we're okay. Like, yes, Elijah Royal, by some people's standard, considering where he was drafted, may have disappointed. I was always under the idea with him that he was going to be a 2-year kind of, we'll see the jump in year 2. I also think Brian Fleury will, again, tight end background, you will see, I think, a jump from Elijah Royal.
It was nice not to have to pay close attention to that group. It was nice to not have to care about the quarterbacks at all. And I enjoyed watching the throwing session because I didn't have to worry about it at all. And I actually thought the quarterbacks threw the ball a lot better than a lot of people gave them credit for.
How terrified are you that somehow the Rams don't use their first 2 picks on a quarterback and they get Drew Allar falls into their lap and Sean McVay gets that guy?
I mean, I tweeted God forbid he should get his hands on Drew Allar. But he's a developmental guy. Like I think, if they draft Drew Allar or even Ty Simpson, it's like, okay, tell me when Matt Stafford's going to be done playing football, and then I'll tell you how concerned I am about them getting that guy. Like, I'm not so sure that – I don't know that McVay wants to go through that, to be honest. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if when Stafford's ready to be done, they just aggressively go out and get a veteran like they did in acquiring Stafford. I'm not so sure – I don't think McVay wants to be there for 10 more years. I think he has other things in mind. I think, they'll throw the Brinks truck at him to be a broadcaster. He can do anything he wants to. I don't know that he wants to coach until he's 50.
No, I think he's going to have a John Gruden moment where he's going to do the same thing John kind of did and become a broadcaster, to your point, and at a decent, age, maybe 45, and step away.
I will say this, one of the advantages, one of the things that gives me a little bit of comfort about the fact that it's just not a very strong draft class overall. Like, you can find gems and the good teams will find fits and they'll develop them, is there's not anybody in this draft that will scare me if the Cardinals, 49ers, or Rams take them. Just like they shouldn't be scared by anybody we take at 32 or 64, because I think I just came up with a new name for this draft. Like last year, Daniel Jeremiah called last year's draft a starter, not stars draft.
Right.
And he was right. Ton of starters came out of that draft. This year, I would call it the wait and see draft.
Yeah.
Because you're just not going to get as much rookie impact out of this class, but you could get some huge upside a little further down the road. And then the other thing, like we mentioned earlier, is we didn't have to stress about the offensive linemen, although I don't want to ignore them. And I know the fine folks in the comments, which, by the way, I can't contribute to. So, John, thank you for your kind words about the running back video. But we should mention, let's do this. How many guys in this draft do you like enough that you'd be happy if they took him at 32 or 64, because that would be a clear upgrade and a guy you could plug and play over Anthony Bradford?
Ooh.
I think I've got 4 or 5.
Yeah, about that number. I'd say for me, it's 3 to 4 guys. Like, if we were to plug and play over Anthony Bradford, probably 3, maybe 4. That's about it, though. Not an alarming number.
No, for me, it's Besantis, and this is in no particular order. I'm just reading down the combine list. It's Besantis, it's Pregnon, it's Dunker, it's Rutledge, and there's one other guy. I really like Trey Zune out of Texas A&M. They have him listed as a center. He's a converted tackle, though, so I think he could play guard as well. And then, a little bit later on, this guy isn't as much of a slam dunk, but if you tell me Bo Stevens is our 6th-round pick, I'm like, okay, let him compete, because I like him quite a bit too. And I just didn't pay attention to the centers because I just believe that Jalen Sundell. I've actually even gone farther with how I feel about him. I think he might have Pro Bowls in his future.
I think that after seeing what he did over the back half, that's more the player I envisioned at the start of the year that just wasn't there. One other guy I would add to that list there, Dan, of offensive linemen I would take, basically all the guys you hit on are the same for me. Another one is Brian Parker, the second out of Duke. He's going to be a guy that's going to have to live inside. And I like his tape a lot.
Yeah, and he looked he was a smooth mover today. He looked really, really nice, his movement skills too. But that's kind of it for me.
Yep.
Let me see if we have some questions, since I'm the one that has to put them on the screen, even though they're from your side. My YouTube issues are worse than ever, so I'll be staying up all night emailing them nasty things. Anyway, let's see. John says, Dunker to replace Bradford, please, please, please. He's just so fun too. Like I said this when I saw him in Mobile. Well, even before that, I think I did a mock draft mid-season and I had Dunker in there. He's this year's Gray Zabel, in my opinion.
Yep.
Right? Like he's that farm kid with kind of the quirky, funny personality and the mustache. He's got the flowing red, the ginger mullet.
Oh yeah.
Did you happen to see today at the end of the Combine broadcast where they did like the montage of all the great mullets over the last couple of years?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. But yeah, he's a guy that I really like, and we'll see. Like I've changed my mind on this because up until this week, and I'm sure a bunch of people in the comments right now have heard me say this, I didn't want any of our 4 draft picks devoted to the offensive line because I'm bullish on Cable Do.
Yeah.
And they have Richmond and Haynes and all these other guys that you've invested in. You've invested more picks in the offensive line than any team in the league in the last 5 years. You don't just show those guys the door, but you also just add talent when you see it. And if you can get a better guy, because as much as it's easy for you and I to say, hey, Bradford improved by leaps and bounds. We talked to Brian Baldinger, you did, down in Mobile, and he said, stick with him. Continuity is more important. I like what I saw from him. Blah, blah, blah. He was the weak spot. And what we know about Mike McDonald is he will not hesitate to play a guy over another guy if he thinks it makes the team better, right?
Yep.
Tyrese Knight never got his job back. Jerome Baker never got his job back, and Terrell Dodson never got his job back, right? Lincoln Kennedy Polamalu didn't get his job. He will make hard changes if he thinks it makes the team better. And these guys watch tape, and we knew that they were poking around at the trade deadline and looking at Cesar Ruiz. So if they see a guy, if they're sitting there at 32 and all their other needs have been taken care of in free agency, and the top guy on their board is Jennings Dunker, they will not hesitate to take him because they took a guard last year.
Agreed. And I think that's just the way Mike's wired. Mike has loyalty, but not to the same extent Pete had loyalty.
Yeah. And plus, when you just start to think of, like, as good as that offense was this year, and it was good enough to get Kubiak a head coaching job, right?
Yep.
If you shore up that one spot, that offensive line averaging, the average age would probably go down next year if you add another 22-year-old rookie to it. But it's like 24, 25 years old. They're all locked up long-term. You can build a dominant offensive line, which would be able to allow you to dictate terms to teams and not have to use as much 6-man protection. And that would just allow Brian Fleury, to do so much more.
Yep. Agreed.
Let's see. Sonny said, I hope he went back home to figure out contract talks and try to get something done. I do think that's one of the reasons Schneider came back home, right? He's so far behind in the process of getting ready for the offseason because of the Super Bowl run that, like, he trusts his scouts. He's got his guys that have been with him for a long time. He doesn't need to be there. Plus, and I saw, who was this? I saw an interview the other day with a head coach from another team, and now I can't remember who it was. And he came back early and he was being interviewed, and he said, you can watch it all on TV. You can get just as much out of it on TV. And I saw an interview with another coach today. Oh, it was Greg Ballard, who said that even when he's up in his VIP box or whatever watching it, he catches himself watching it on the monitor more than he actually watches it through his binoculars or on the field. So he wasn't ignoring the combine. But he probably is back here. He talked to the agent, said he met with every agent that he wanted to of all the players they represent. He's back home doing some work. What would you put the over under at of our own free agents that you think get done before tampering opens on the 9th?
Oh, I only think 2 players get done. Realistically, really, I only think 1 at this point. Like the main free agents, we're not talking about the RFAs and stuff, Dan.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
the main UFAs.
Mafe, Reed, Bryant, Shaheed.
I think 2 get done. I think it's Job and Jones.
Oh, Josh Jones. Yeah, we always forget about him, but I think he'd be an important re-signing too.
I think Job, both Joshes. That's how I'll put it. Both Joshes, I think, will be back.
And you know what I think makes that even more likely is what we saw today. This is a really good tackle class. And you're starting to see a lot of the big boards and mock drafts reflect that. Like we might get 6-7 tackles going the first round, which, and Rob Staten wrote about this today too. That will only help the Seahawks because it just pushes other guys down that they might want.
Yep, exactly. And I think Jones is, again, you got Jones, you got Amari Kite. They could have a battle in camp this year. But what Jones was able to do when Cross went out, it was the first time in a while we went, as a collective, I think in Seattle went, oh gosh, our starting left tackle went down. Oh, we put out somebody that's competent and can play the position, and we're not screwed. We can still win football games. Like, it's not like when we went, oh crap, we lost George Fant in the preseason and went, Riso Diombo, you're up next. And we watched that turnstile just occur to the point until we traded for Dwayne Brown. Like, to have that ability to lose a key piece of your offensive line for not just like one game, we're talking multiple games, that was key.
And I think I still believe, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I still believe that before free agency opens on the 9th, I think they get Job done. I forgot about Jones. I keep forgetting about him, but I think that gets done too. I think that's really smart. And he might be one that maybe the first couple hours of free agency opens and he gets out there and just doesn't see what he wants. And I still think Shaheed gets done. I really do. I know that things change, and but again, they're talking about 6-7 receivers going in the first round. He's an older receiver coming off his rookie contract because he was an older drafted player. He's 27 now. He didn't do much in the pass game. There's some questions about like how polished of a receiver he is. He's a deep threat, but is he really a good route runner? He's a second or third receiver in your offense, and it's the return stuff, but how much are you willing to pay for that? I still think he gets done. I think those 3 do, and then Kobe Bryant's kind of the mystery for me, and I think he goes out and tests the market. They were saying, I don't know if you heard this or not, but they mentioned this a couple of times on the broadcast when the safeties were going on Friday. I think Charles Davis said to DJ, he's like, a lot of free agent safeties right now are realizing that they're not going to make as much money in the open market because it's a much, much better safety class than a lot of people thought heading into it. And so maybe Bryant, even though he's turned down their overtures a couple of times, maybe they get that one done too.
Yeah, maybe. I think it'll be, I will say this, if Seattle is to get Crosby, it'll be no later than March 11th. If they get past March 11th, I don't think Crosby is going to be a viable option.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it too. I think just because I think John isn't going to want to wait. He wants clarity. And I think he takes one more shot at him. Maybe he already has. Maybe that's already done with, right? He takes one more shot at him, or at least lets Spytek know, hey, if you get an offer, call me. We'll see if we can, top it or match it or whatever. Which would be hard for them to do because we obviously draft lower than every other team in the league. So those picks aren't as valuable. But I think he's going to want clarity because if March 9th rolls around and they can't get Crosby, then I think they might aggressively go for somebody else in the market.
I totally agree with that. I think that is their number one priority this offseason. Like I like outside of bringing back, and this is the one thing I'll say about the Shaheed situation. Price or Pierce, Alex Pierce is at the receiver out of Indianapolis.
Yep.
There's rumblings that they may put the transition tag or even franchise tag on him.
They said they're not going to let him get to the market.
And so if they do that, that all of a sudden boosts Shaheed's market for the Buffalo Bills and the Raiders bit.
Because he's not the same kind of player. Like I think the Bills need they need a number one wide receiver. They need a guy that has size and length, and they need a complete receiver. Shaheed's not that.
No, he's not. But I think he again gives them something they don't really have either. He's got that over the top burner speed, and he adds to your return game in a way. And the Raiders, I think, are another team that may look at it because they don't have anybody for realistic sake, right? And Kubiak's kind of the reason he ended up in Seattle to begin
Don't
with. So
slander Jack Besh like that.
I'm sorry.
Don't slander Jack Besh.
I'm so like it's one of those things where I could just, because of that happening with Indianapolis,
right?
It has a trickle down effect onto Shahid's market just enough where it could push him out of Seattle's range, just enough.
Yeah, it could, but I think I've already reached a point where, like, honestly,
you're okay either way.
There's nobody that I'll be upset about signing elsewhere, because that's how good our roster is and how complete it is and how good they are at drafting and how many young guys we have in the pipeline and just how good the coaching staff is and how much money they have to work with. Like, they're not painted into a corner at all. And every single one of these guys, you can see a path to replacing them with someone as good or potentially better. If DeMarcus Lawrence retires and we can't get Crosby, I think they sign 2 in free agency. I could see him doing like a Bradley Chubb, Arnold Ebiketie kind of a combo, right? Where you're not paying you're not going Jalen Phillips, you're not going Odafe Awe, but maybe you get Chubb on like a 1-year prove it deal, and you get Ebiketie on sort of a Nwosu deal because he was a guy that was a rotational player. So maybe it's like a 2-year modest deal or whatever. And you throw 2 guys at it. He's always hedged needs going into the draft, but I think this year more than ever, by the time we get to the end of April, for all these people now that anytime we post a mock draft, they're like, no, we need this or we need that. By the time we get to April, we're all going to be doing shows saying best player available.
Yeah.
Let's see how the board drops, because we're ready to play football right now.
I'll say this about the Ken Walker situation, and just because I think there's right now with Ken Walker, and I love Ken Walker. I think for a lot of fans, there's a lot of postseason rose-colored glasses on with what he did this past postseason in the let's pay him, let's get it done, let's bring him back, which I totally understand. But when John Schneider's looking at this, he is looking not just at the last 4-game stretch, 5-game stretch of the season. He is looking at the totality of Ken Walker and his career in Seattle. And with the injury history and how they had to, basically handle him with kid gloves this year just to get him through the year, that's not what you do with a $14 million back, where his market or $12 million back. You shouldn't need to do that. He should be, a guy that can tote the rock 75% of the time or 65% of the time and be okay. Not be in a complete 50-50 timeshare throughout the entirety of the season.
John asks, is Sundell really better than Tyler Linderbaum? John, have you seen the reports today? Tyler Linderbaum's going to get $22.5 million on the market, if he even makes the market. The Ravens have said that they've already offered him a contract that would make him the highest paid center of all time. So yeah, Sundell at $1 million. Linderbaum's not. Look, he's an elite pass protector. He's not really a great run blocker. And there's some concern about, there's some little injury issues that have cropped up. I am not paying that kind of money for a center when we have other premium position needs. I'm just not.
I'll put it this way. He's not Kevin Mowai. He's not Alex Mack. He's not any of the elite centers that we have seen over the time in the NFL to that level where we're talking about a guy that is Hall of Fame worthy right now. He is a very good center. I will not take that away from Tyler Linderbaum.
Sure.
But I think
he'll upgrade someone's offensive line.
Oh, 100% he will.
Yeah.
I think
Chargers.
Yep. I think Jalen Sundell is, more than capable of handling duties and being a top 15 NFL center.
Let me ask you this, because I get this a lot. What do you think of Kayvon Thibodeau? They're talking about trading because it's the last year of his deal, and they've got Burns, and they've got Carter.
I don't think Thibodeau fits this version of Seattle's defense. I don't think he's a type of player that fits Mike McDonald's mentality of team. Like, I'll put it this way. can you put Kayvon Thibodeau and Max Crosby in a room and say, how much do you love football, and get the same answer? Probably not. Max Crosby loves football. He loves the game. He loves competing. And you can see how upset he is with the way that things have gone in Vegas, that it bothers him. It bothers him when guys come in and don't compete their hardest. I don't think you get that from Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'm not saying Thibodeau's not a good player and doesn't have, amazing athletic ability. But with the way this locker room is currently constructed, they want guys that love football and love ball, and all they care about is that.
Three Guns Deep says Sundell's a liability in pass protection. Vehemently disagree with that. I think there's probably some reps that you might be thinking about where Bradford, crapped the bed next to him, and so he had to try to make up for him. I know it's just one unit of measure. It's not the be all end all, but I know PFF has him at 67.7, which is a good pass blocking grade. It's better than his run blocking grade. He's 15th out of 40 qualifying centers. And I think what we saw from him after he got back from injury was even better. And I think next year he's going to even take another step. Like you look again, it's just one unit of measure, but it's at least it's one entity that's grading the same way. And so you can see trends. It's the one thing that I look at PFF for. And if you look at Sundell's page for the season from week 1 to 18, his pass block grades all the way across the board, but especially pass blocking, it's like 51.9, 63.6, 69.6, 77. Then he had a couple of rough games, Tampa Bay and Jacksonville. Then an 85.2 against fucking Houston, a 75, a 77, a 79. And then at the end, when the games mattered most, 76, 78, 69, 75. He's not a liability in pass protection. Disagree with that.
Yeah, I totally.
This is fantastic. Thanks for the super chat, X-Wing. Always good to see you. Can you imagine Dunker and Zabel with matching mustaches and mullets? No safe place for a Busch Light in all of Washington State. I think they I think if they were to draft Jennings Dunker, it would be like that scene from Step Brothers. And maybe Jalen Sundell will get a little jealous because I know he and Zabel are boys, but it would be like, did we just become best friends?
Yeah, no kidding, right? It would legitimately be that situation. I think the three of them all together, you'd never have any safe Busch Light in the entire state.
I'm telling you, I've come full circle on this, from it's not the best use of resources to I think they're going to take care of the roster before the draft comes around. And when we're on the board, if Jennings Dunker is there, the opportunity to build like the last building block to what could be a dominating offensive line for years to come. Yep. That's pretty enticing. That's pretty damn enticing. I could go for that. I think that's it, man. That was fun. I'd love to go to the combine someday, but guys like us don't get credentials to go. So
no, we're not allowed to go and actually be draft nerds at the combine.
Which is so, the irony is that we talked about how you said at the top that the combine's kind of dying, guys aren't testing or whatever. I sort of have an idea, I think, a sketch of an idea of what they could do to try to improve it. First of all, it would cost the league some money. But you pay these guys. You give them a fee for showing up. We're not talking 50 grand, right? I don't know what the number would be, whatever the number is. You offer them some money. And then you have a deadline about a week before the combine where they have to declare and they have to agree and maybe even have them sign a binding contract that says, I'm going to do all the testing. And then if they show up to the combine and they don't do the testing,
they don't get their money.
They don't get their money. They just don't get it unless they can prove a verifiable injury that's documented by doctors that are there.
Yep.
The reason I have the deadline a week out is because, or maybe you put it 2 weeks out, right? Because there are so many players every year that get snubbed by the combine that end up getting drafted or get signed as undrafted free agents and make a career for themselves that would give anything to be there and show what they have and try to get noticed and would do every test no matter what for free Well, then anyone who opts out by that date, then you can reinvite some of those people and get them down there to the combine. Then we would have more participation. That's my plan. That's my idea.
I like it. I think it's a good way of trying to get the combine back to what it was.
And maybe this person wasn't with us earlier, but Noob 008 says combine is a joke. All its lower coaches mentality, torturing players to see what they do. These players aren't forced to do that. This, first of all, it's choice. But second of all, the reason the combine was invented in 1977 was strictly for the medical evaluations. It was a medical combine so that all teams could get accurate information about these prospects, because the year before, the New York Jets, of course it was the Jets, drafted a guy that they then later found out when he arrived for camp was legally blind. So it's the medical stuff and the measurements and the interviews that are the bulk of the reason that the combine happens. So the combine's never going to go anywhere. No. It's still entertaining enough. It's never going to be wide appeal. The combine is not for casual fans or non-fans. They tried to move it to nights. They tried to put it in primetime a couple years ago. Remember that? And
God, that was horrible.
The players hated it because they had to wait around all damn day and they warm up and then they get cool. It's for nerds, and it'll always be for nerds. And I don't care who tests and who doesn't. It still gives you a chance to see these guys in a different atmosphere, in a different light. It helps in my evaluations. It helps in my profiles.
I think which would be cool, though, is getting more access to the pro days. I think that would be a bonus if the combine's never going to be what it was, to give more access to fans of pro days and, have like, hey, throughout the week, we've got pro day A, B, C, D on these different times and whatnot. Like, yeah, I think that would be a valuable thing as well to have.
Yeah, and the NFL Network tries to, be at the important ones or whatever, but they only focus on the quarterbacks, really. Like we don't see the other position groups, so it's kind of meaningless. Here's one. Maybe this is a good one to end on. Space for the win. I assume that's what FTW means, for the win. Yeah. I ran a 4.3 back in the day. Is that seconds? Seconds, right? Seconds.
Probably seconds, not minutes.
What was your fastest time?
My fastest time probably was my first year of college. As a quarterback, I was 6'4", 235, and I ran a 4.57.
Okay.
And that was like literally right after that. I was hurting. I was really like, I never ran that close again. I was like more of a 4.59 guy after that.
My best was a 4.6. I was more quick than fast. That was my thing.
Yeah, for me, I was better off in my 10 shuttle than I ever was going to be in the 40.
They hadn't even invented the 10-yard shuttle, but back when I was doing it, I was quicker than fast. Good contact balance. Good yards after the yards.
I prided myself on my pocket presence. It was how long can I hang on in the pocket like Ben Roethlisberger.
As a quarterback, I was a good running back. That's what I always say.
There you go. Good old wing T offense.
I always looked. We ran what was called an outside veer. It was the dumbest offense of all time, dude. I got to show you how they made us do our drops sometime. It was it was the dumbest thing ever. We literally had to turn our back to the defense as we took our drops. It was so dumb. And it cut the field in half. Anyway, we'll talk about it some other time. What do you got coming up on the show next couple of days?
I got
time off. You're all refreshed and
I took a little bit of a break. There was a little bit, burnt out after the season, how long it went. So took a bit of a break. Coaching's ramped up for me. But for me, got Greg Bell coming on this week. We're going to kind of talk post combine and stuff, which will be fun with Greg. He's always a great guest. And Jeff Simmons will be coming on for a live show later on in the week to kind of set up as a free agency primer. We got Seahawks Syndicate on Thursday, 5:00, which will be fun. And then I do have a draft show that I will be starting a live show. They'll come out Tuesday nights, as most nights is when we're going to get it done. And I believe you're going to be a part of that show, Dan. And
what?
It's
what?
Yeah, you. Yeah, I know, right?
All right.
So we'll be doing a draft show with positional breakdowns by group. Like we'll start with the edge. We'll do a whole breakdown and we'll finish most nights off with a mock draft, and we'll call it Eye on the Draft.
Nice. I like it. That's good. We did get some clarity from Space for the win. It was a 20-yard split.
Oh, so do we times that by 2 then? So it was an 8-6?
8-6. That's awesome. Love it. Noob asks if you watch the CFL. I imagine.
do.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Did you see your buddy Taylor Elgersmo was one of the guys out there on like Thursday and Friday throwing to like the backs and stuff?
I really do think he's got to give up the NFL dream at this point a little bit. He's got a pretty good contract, I think, sitting in Winnipeg for him, where they basically view him as the future of the franchise.
Was he Packers practice squad?
Yes, he was Packers practice squad last year because he played against Seattle in the last preseason game.
Maybe he's got a shot to make that roster because Willis is going to move on.
Maybe if he gets back in there, yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, I do watch Noob quite a bit of the CFL. I think it's really interesting now that the CFL is trying to Americanize a little bit. They've, in the next couple of years here, they're shortening the end zones. They're going from 20 yards deep. Yeah, 20. So there's a bunch of changes to the CFL game now. So the end zones are both being shortened by 5 yards. So they're only 15 yards deep. The goalposts are no longer on the goal line. They're going to the back of the end zone, which is taking away a bit of the kick return game.
But also a chance that someone's going to die during a game.
Yeah, exactly. And they've also removed the 55-yard line. The field is going to be shorter, so it'll only have 50. So it'll be a couple changes. There's a whole bunch of historic CFL fans that think it's horrible, and there's a whole bunch that think that it's the worst thing ever. I'm of the idea that, hey, you know what? Some of these changes aren't bad for the game. They still have the wider field. They still are only 3 downs. They have the unlimited motion, which I think are great.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, but like for me, coaching wise, it's always weird because in BC, our high schools play full on American rules while everybody else plays Canadian rules. So when I do what I'm doing, which is coaching our team, our what would be the consideration of an all-state team, all province team, Team BC, we play Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba this summer. Well, all of them just play Canadian rules, but most of the kids I get on my roster are a mix where 75, 80% have never played Canadian football in their life and only know American football because they've only played in high school. So trying to teach them some of those nuances of the game is always a challenge.
You know who I think should play in Canada?
Diego Pavia?
Taylon Green. Oh, Pavia too, but Taylon Green.
Yes. I think he'd work in the Canadian game quite well.
Yeah. That athletic ability to run around and move with the bigger field and everything. I think that would fit. I think that would fit him. So this is kind of fun. John asked this question completely unprompted. Dan, are you ever going to do a fan appreciation show like Bryce did? Would love to be a guest on your podcast too. Got to support my 2 fave guys. Always appreciate you, John. So, all right. Since you asked, I'm going to start a new podcast. It's going to be a companion channel to this one, so it'll be separate. It'll be its own channel. It's going to be called 12 is 1. And what I'll do when it starts, I've already checked that name's not copyrighted or trademarked or taken by anybody else. It'll be a weekly interview show where I have a fan on, someone that's a good viewer, follow the show. And we'll talk about your experiences and your memories and your favorite moments and your history and your thoughts on the team and all of that. So look for that to be starting sometime this after the draft. I'm not going to start it until I get this fucking StreamYard and YouTube shit.
Yeah, no kidding.
Figured out, because it's even worse tonight. I don't even know what's going on now. It's not even streaming it's streaming there, but you have to have the link to find it. It's all screwed up. Anyway, so that's that. So look out for that. And then this coming week, I'll just be doing a lot of draft stuff. I've really enjoyed this combine. I'm taking advantage of it for the last 4 days, because I feel like I've done a lot of catching up on the time that I missed and the work that I didn't put in. I'm also going to be working with Coach Derek a little bit. This is new news today as well. He's starting a new draft website that looks unbelievable. Like, it looks as good as like, to me, kind of the standard right now is Sumer Sports, like just gorgeous website, and their profiles, they're very succinct and to the point, but it looks great. He's starting a site just like that, and I'm going to write some profiles for him. So that'll be fun too. So you can look out for that. And Kick Up says, I wonder if Dan would let me on the fan special show. There will be a preliminary Zoom call in advance of the show. Like you're going to have, like, I got to see, I'm not just going to blindly invite anyone on because I don't want to sit there for 30 minutes and have someone that gets camera shy or whatever. And so we'll have like a kind of a first interview, sort of like a preliminary before we commit to the whole thing. But check your setup, make sure your mic and your camera and all that looks good. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun. So
yeah.
Any final thoughts? Anything we missed?
The next week will be interesting for the Seahawks. I think there may be an opportunity, Dan, where we are doing emergency pods left, right.
Shit's gonna go fast and furious. Yeah.
Yep. And Seahawks Syndicate will be fun getting back together as basically a free agency primer show in a lot of ways. It'll be it'll give you a good time. 5 o'clock on Thursday.
5 o'clock Pacific time on Thursday. We'll kind of do a combine recap as a group, but then really talk about this free agency stuff. We might even have some signings before then. We'll probably have some big news from around the league, maybe within the division, Kyler Murray being released, stuff like that's going to start happening. And I do think, I think last March was a record month for my channel, Gino, DK, Darnold, Cup, Lawrence, all that stuff. And I think, with all the free agents we have, anytime someone signs or signs elsewhere, or we sign someone else, trades perhaps, I think it's going to be a fun month. So like my lady and I on the 5th and 6th, we're going out of town for a little day trip. And I'm like, babe, I got to take the laptop. I'm going to be on my phone a lot. And if something happens, I'm going to have to, while you're visiting with the grandkids, I'm going to have to go out in the car and do an emergency pod on my phone if I have to. So yeah, this is good times. It's always fun because I like this process, right? I like the roster building part of it almost as much as I like what happens on the field. But when you go through a season like we just did, you just get so attached. Like I didn't want that season to end because I just love that team so much.
Yeah,
I think I love them more than the LOB and the 2014 team, to be honest.
I do too.
So I don't want all these guys to leave. I don't want, well, I don't think they're all going to leave. I don't want any of them to leave. I'm also excited for what's new because if we don't sign DeMarcus Lawrence last year, we don't win the Super Bowl. If we don't sign Cooper Kupp, we don't win the Super Bowl. If we don't trade for Rashid Shaheed, we don't win the Super Bowl, right?
If we don't sign Sam Darnold, we don't win the Super Bowl.
Right. We don't know what's going to happen over the next week. It's scary, but it's exciting too.
Really is, but it's going to be fun.
Thanks for all you guys for being here. There's 1,000 of you here, even though nobody can see my YouTube page. That's fantastic. Kudos to you, Bryce. I'll get this fixed eventually. I'll figure it out. I don't know, whatever. I'll find a hacker.
You just have to sick the Seahawks Syndicate on them. Me, Brandon, Mookie.
I've tried nasty emails. I've tried nice emails. I've tried explaining it in my words. I've tried having ChatGPT diagnose the problem and write an email to explain it to them in technical jargon. All of it. And now, and for a while I thought there was progress and they really cared. And now I get these emails every 2 days where it's like, did you even read my last one? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll hang in there. We'll persevere. Anyway, forever and always go Hawks. That's Bryce. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you soon.